When I was growing up, I knew a girl named Cynthia who was born hard of hearing. And because of this, she often switched schools because the programs in them were inadequate, unfocused, or in one case, even canceled. She was thrown into the cycle of trying to learn, having a lack of resources failing her, and because of that, having to go and start over again. Because of her story and the fact that it's not necessarily unique, shows how special needs students should be better integrated into public schools. And I know some of you may be skeptical. Some of you may think that this problem isn't as big as it is. However, today I'll show you how the issue has historically been a problem as well as how it currently exists today. And for those of you who do acknowledge it, I'll give you the information you need to help change the status quo in your everyday lives. Cynthia, the girl I had mentioned earlier, is not someone I just knew. She was my sister. And because of her experiences, I've decided to create change in my own life. I am a peer tutor at my high school in the special needs department to help change the everyday lives of special needs students. I've also done research, used journals and articles in order to help provide you with the relevant information you need for today. So today, I'll persuade you that special needs students are being segregated. Next, I'll offer a solution through integration opportunities. And finally, I will highlight the benefits that can be gained through inclusion. So let's get started. First, we'll discuss how special needs students are being segregated. The mentality behind the segregation isn't anything new. Ableism, which is defined by the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development as society's pervasive attitude about a disability, is something that has existed throughout time. The root of this problem is from the stem dis, which means un, and in this case, unable. This label has carried around with the term disability and has led to many mistreatment examples throughout history. And in the same way, racism saw its turn through the case of Brown versus the Board of Education. Ableism, it's seeing its turn through the education system as well, specifically with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Previously, Congress had found that it costs twice as much for a school to educate a special needs student as it does for a mainstream student. Because of this, many schools use this as an excuse to not provide adequate resources for these students. However, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act changed all of this. It appropriated money to these states and schools, so they had to create programs and could no longer use funding as an excuse. And it helped change the status quo for the better. However, I'm sure a lot of you are still skeptical. Many of you may think that the programs themselves need to have a level of segregation in order to give the students the attention they need. And while that may be true, there is still a problem that exists when schools abuse their power. Specifically in the case of Georgia. The state of Georgia had a program which is called the Georgia Network for Educational and Therapeutic Support, or GENETS for short. And this program essentially had special needs students in a separate building for mainstream students in order to provide the personal attention they needed. However, in 2016, the Department of Justice sued the state of Georgia for this program because they found it had practiced segregation and discrimination. A case as recent as 3 years ago shows how prevalent this problem is and how persistent it is to this day. So now that we understand the problem of special needs segregation in public schools, let's talk about some solutions, specifically through integration opportunities. There's a thin line between giving a special needs student support through separation and segregation. And that line becomes very thin when you talk about giving a student a specialized class or a mainstream classroom. In order to decide this, schools ought to apply what is called the Individuals Education Program, which is defined by an article in Preventing School Failure as a program and meeting in which parents and staff set the goals and responsibilities of all parties. This program helps keep the child's interests in mind while they create a plan to help the child succeed. Furthermore, schools can also apply what are called inclusion classrooms whenever mainstream class is in question. This is where mainstream students and special needs students are put in the same classroom, but have a curriculum that's more project-based and group-based. This ensures that the collaboration happens between the two groups, which wouldn't be apparent in a normal classroom. Next, schools should apply more sports and activities that are catered for special needs students. Specifically, when it comes to sports where they aren't able to have the same tryouts or same opportunities due to their physical limitations. A great program that can combat this is is called the Unified Program, which works with special needs students and peers to help create those opportunities. Now that we see some solutions to the problem of special needs segregation, let's look to the benefits of inclusion. First, we're going to see benefits in growth and development. The Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development found that inclusion classrooms were beneficial because, in addition to promoting academic success, these strategies uncover strengths such as curiosity, concentration, empathy, and divergent thinking. Overall, having mainstream students and special needs students together helps give special needs students the development and foundation to continue benefiting in their development through positive characteristics. Next, we can look to diversity. We can see how having special needs students and mainstream students together will help break down the barriers that lead to the stigmas and stereotypes from being perpetuated. These can help special needs students and mainstream students both grow in what they understand to help break down that label of disability and help create so much more in between. And finally, we can look to how it will benefit social skills. Special needs students are often see speech therapists in order to help equalize their development. However, being able to interact with mainstream students on a day-to-day basis will help special needs students to practice and grow their speech development far more quickly and in ways that a book can't teach you. In conclusion, I've shown how special needs students are currently being segregated in the public education system and should be better incorporated. I've persuaded you that special needs students have and are being segregated. I've also offered a solution through integration opportunities, and finally, I've highlighted the benefits that can be gained through inclusion. Overall, I hope that this speech has made you guys more eager to reach out and change the status quo. To do so, I urge you to simply stop and have a conversation. If an individual with special needs comes by, instead of looking down and walking a little faster, I hope that you're able to stop and ask them how their day is, or simply ask what they're up to. I want to end this speech going back to my sister. She often switched schools, going to 4 different elementary schools in the span of 5 years. And because of this, when she got to high school, she was afraid of what would happen. She became settled on the idea that no one would be able to help her. But then one individual came into her life, Susan, a teacher who was able to help slow down and sit down with Cynthia in order to help her get through the classes and help understand what she was being taught, helped Cynthia learn and actually enjoy school. And because of that, Cynthia grew from someone who couldn't tell the difference between then and then to someone who went on to graduate high school with high honors. And because of that story, we can see the impact a single individual can have. And because of that, we can see how, because some people may not be born with the fortunes as you or me, it doesn't mean that shouldn't be given opportunities to learn and flourish into the future.